You know Spider-Man and Mary Jane, or Wolverine's often unrequited love for Jean Grey, but there are many comic romances out there that you don't know about. Or do you? Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda McKnight, aka VampX13, but you can call me Vampy, and today we're counting down the top 10 superhero couples you've never seen before. Who do you ship? Number 10. Wasp and Magneto. Wasp and Magneto. This is a relationship that blew my mind when I first found out about it. For me, it's been a few years now since I've known about this romance and first discovered it, but I'm sure most folks out there are kinda surprised to hear about it still, especially if you are newer to comics. This one was from the original Secret Wars event, where it was implied that Magneto and Wasp may have had a brief affair during the event, or at the very least had a flirtation going. It seems to me that Magneto just has mad riz and is basically able to charm just almost anyone in the romance department, regardless of if they're an ally to him or perhaps are even his enemy. Wasp herself was not entirely immune to his charms, it seems, though she did, I think, lean more into the romance in an attempt to survive and to potentially see if she could get vital information out of him. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to let us know you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9. Cyclops and Psylocke. Cyclops is typically a hero you'd think of tied to Jean Grey, aka Marvel Girl, or maybe you prefer him with Emma Frost. Psylocke, on the other hand, has had a few different partners, with none of them being super iconic for me. She's been with Phantom X if I had to think of loves who perhaps were the most iconic for her, I guess. However, most people would never think of shipping Psylocke with Cyclops, especially when we consider that at one point she also kind of flirted with Havoc, I believe. But here we are, comics. Cyclops and Psylocke had a flirtation going strong in the early 90s. It was clear that they both wanted each other, with Psylocke even at times competing with Jean in an attempt to steal Scott away from her. Oh, the 90s. What a time of strange romances. Number 8. The Flash and Raven. The Flash and Raven are a couple most people do not think of when they think of Teen Titans, or as they are now, just Titans and their romances. The Flash and Raven are a couple most people do not think of when they think of romances in regards to the Teen Titans, or as they are known now, just Titans. Currently in the comics, Wally is married to the love of his life, Linda, and they also have their 2 kids back. And Raven is currently with Beast Boy in a very loving and accepting relationship on both sides, based on, what I've seen so far anyways. Both have sturdy partnerships that are basically relationship goals for many of us out there, I imagine. But there was a time when it seemed like Wally and Raven could actually be an item. However, it should be noted that mainly Raven was the one who wanted it to be with Wally, and Wally was kind of rightfully terrified of Raven. Needless to say, the romance didn't end up blossoming into anything. Number 7. Ironman and Hellcat. Ironman and Hellcat are another couple that most people don't think of when they think of either of these heroes. I mean, I know I didn't, at least not until recently, not until I saw it happen, and then I was kinda like, wait, what? Well, everyone has likely been talking about Iron Man and Emma Frost lately. Before that was going on, or rather I guess kind of in between when that was going on, Hellcat and Tony almost ended up engaged. Yeah, and can you imagine learning that you were almost engaged to someone and then they ended up marrying someone else? Sounds wild. Although also that sounds like comics. Granted, Hellcat was the one who turned Tony down. She did love him, she just wasn't ready to be married again, and considering her history with marriage, I gotta say, I get it. Number 6. Storm and Doctor Doom. For those who don't know about this bizarre flirtation, which has also consisted of at least one date, but one very strange date, and another more diplomatic dinner between the 2 rulers, though I'm sure Doom wanted it to be another date. This might seem like an odd pairing, but yes, this is a thing that happened, and oddly, it even kinda works as a ship, to be honest. Even though the date ended extremely poorly with Storm trapped in a chrome casing, her worst nightmare, as at the time, she was still suffering from claustrophobia. It's clear that there is chemistry between these 2. In fact, there is even an alternate reality where Doom successfully made Storm his queen, and the pair even have children together. Number 5. Raven and Wallace West. Raven and Wallace West is not a relationship I ever expected to see happen, especially when you consider these characters being from completely different eras in comics should in theory have a pretty large age gap between them. But this being comics, apparently that is something we're just kind of supposed to ignore. It's especially weird though when you consider that, as I previously mentioned, yes, Raven used to have the hots for Wally West, Wallace's much older cousin. At least that was the implication on the age gap between those 2 that I got when Wally was the Flash and Wallace was his kid Flash during Rebirth, so that all also makes it really weird. Number 4. Scarlet Witch and Loki. While this never fully came to fruition, it was such a weird and compelling flirtation, a dance, literally, that we witnessed between Scarlet Witch and Loki that I felt I had to share it with you. I feel like Loki and Wanda have had a bit of a spark now and then in the comics, but it came to a head more recently in the Scarlet Witch series by Steve Orlando and Sarah Pichelli, with Lorenzo Tometa in this issue as well. The issue in question is issue number 8 of the recent 2023 series. When Wanda is tasked with helping a mountain giant of Jotunheim, Arkin, who hopes to reclaim his honor and convince Loki to let him act as a leader for his people, she confronts the newly dubbed God of Stories, and during their dance, duel of honesty and flirtation, the two seemingly realize they have more in common than both of them and us, the readers, might at first suspect. However, in the end, Wanda ultimately decides that their relationship cannot proceed because she still cannot trust Loki to be honest with her, as she observes that he still sometimes struggles with being honest with himself. Honestly, touché. Number 3. Superman and Hope. Superman and Hope are a couple that most people don't think of when they think of Clark. This is because most people either think of Superman and Lana Lang, or more commonly Clark and Lois. Hope, however, was a recent dalliance that Supes had from his long-standing romance and now a rock of a marriage with Lois. She was a Green Lantern that Superman ran into when he was basically stranded away from home. The two had a romance that lasted honestly quite some time, but Hope, who was a Green Lantern, although at first she didn't know it, wasn't willing to part with Clark, and even when a viable way home was found for him, she actually fought to try and keep him by her side. However, he did make it home in the end, and of course made his way back to Lois and she to him, despite the strain Clark's time away put on their relationship. Number 2. Jean Grey and Pyro. Jean Grey and Pyro are a romance you definitely wouldn't expect to see in the comic, but in the first volume of the Marauders comic series, this couple did appear, albeit only in an illusionary world that Emma Frost basically created to prevent Yellowjacket from fully infiltrating Krakoa. Instead, this was a fantasy that Emma chose to feed the villain, who had hitched a ride inside Pyro following a run-in with Homines Verende. In the illusion, Pyro returns to Krakoa where Jean is seemingly waiting for him. The two kiss before riding off in his sporty hot rod with the top down. Island life. Number 1. Martian Manhunter and Fire. Martian Manhunter is not a hero who is often known for his romances. This is because he mainly is known for one romance that ended so tragically that it seems it affected his ability to love, romantically at least, in the future. That would be the tragic loss of his wife, child, and often in many cases entire homeworld, something John never really gets over in the comics. He's also often a stoic, calm figure whose personality just doesn't seem as well suited to romance or passionate love affairs in regards to his stories. However, in the DC Black Label comic Human Target, we learn of a surprising romance he has with the fellow Justice League International member, Fire, that actually very strangely works in regards to his character. His love affair with Fire plays on his own fear of the element of fire, and it seems he enjoys the pain, the fear, and kind of that rush from that experience. Pretty freaky, to be honest. The heated affair for Fire is more about using John, sadly, but as Martian Manhunter is an insanely powerful telepath, it seems likely that he knew this the whole time, but he was kind of just willing to accept that part of the relationship in exchange for some steamy, freaky nights. That's about it. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.